Welcome to Wisdom for Nonprofits, bringing the best business wisdom to the nonprofit world. Proven leaders share their experience, insights, and best practices. Finally, a podcast for the busy nonprofit professional. And now, your trusted advisor, Bettina Meyer-Flug.
Hello folks, we're here recording one more podcast for Wisdom for Nonprofits, and today episodes we're going to talk about efficiency and cost savings in the nonprofit ecosystem. We have two special guests, Annie Davis, the Executive Director from United Way, and Sarah Brumling, working also at United Way. Annie Davis has more than 20 years of experience in the higher ed education and also nonprofits. And I'm very impressed how she brings her knowledge of managing those huge organizations to United Way. And my perception is that she wants to share knowledge. That's one of her passions, and she's here to talk about efficiency today. She's going to talk a little bit about her career. Can you talk a little bit how you ended up at United Way? I love the story when you...
Oh, sure. Well, thank you, Bettina. And we are happy to talk about efficiency and effectiveness. And my career started in the nonprofit sector, and I've gone back and forth between that and higher education. And I think that's a component of why I love looking at efficiency and effectiveness, because there's so much that you can do in terms of research and looking at best practices. After working with the National Multiple Sclerosis Society in Washington, I came to Colorado and did graduate school in public affairs, and then moved into higher education and implemented programs at a couple of different universities, but they were all based on kind of a sales model of getting students in the door. And so we started to look very early in my career at those very hard numbers about how many people are you bringing in, how many dollars are you bringing in, and how much is it costing you. And so I think I've always carried that with me as I've gone through my career. Most recently I was with a very large quasi-nonprofit organization that got itself into some financial trouble because it was not paying enough attention to some of the little things that have to do with nonprofit efficiency. Where were they keeping their money? What did their reserves look like? What did their personnel structure look like? How were they doing their budgeting? And were they really paying attention to growing costs in the face of revenue that was fairly flat? And so it's been an honor to be in this position now as CEO of United Way of Larimer County and take some of my hard lessons learned to this.
Yes, I think you use this capability that you have also to be hired here. You remember you told me on your process to being chosen here, you analyze a lot of numbers. How was this experience? Can you tell us?
Yeah. I think one of the most flattering things I've ever heard from our board members is after the hiring process, and they said that one of the reasons that they hired me was because I knew the financials better than them. And I think any nonprofit leader who is passionate about their organization, even if they don't consider themselves a numbers person, and I am an English major in terms of my undergraduate degree, you have to be willing to spend the time to truly understand the financial situation of your organization and look deeply enough that you can realize and analyze trends and know the financials well enough that you're able to spot things when they're out of place. So yes, it takes a lot of time, and it was a lot of brain damage at first to get myself up to speed, but it has been critical, I think, in our ability to make some significant changes that have made our organization much more financially healthy.
That's great. And we have here Sarah Brumling also. She's 8 years in the nonprofit world, and she has an interesting story. Please tell us a little bit about your experience with nonprofits and how did you start your career, because maybe you can inspire other people to come into the nonprofit world too.
Sure. So I'm Sarah, and I started my career in the nonprofit in 2010, I graduated my BFA in graphic design, and I decided that I needed a break from school and from looking at the computer and just needed to get outside. And so I looked into AmeriCorps, and it was Conservation Corps. And so I started with Nevada Conservation Corps, and I was on Chainsaw and Trail Crews. And then after a year, I ended up supervising Chainsaw and Trail Crews, and I loved my experience so much that I went on to work at and serve with 6 other programs throughout the United States. And about 4.5 years ago, I found my job here at United Way of Larimer County as the AmeriCorps Program Manager for Colorado Reading Corps. It is a position that oversaw 25 AmeriCorps members that tutored K through 3rd and elementary literacy interventions. It was a great experience, and after a few years, I decided to move into this new position as Executive Manager to help support Annie Davies, our CEO, with special projects, and I've really enjoyed working alongside of her.
Talking about inspiring people, Annie, I think you have a lot of advice to give, but I'm sure it was not easy for the board members of United Way of Larimer to find such an exceptional CEO. Can you tell us what kind of attributes and professional skills you think were essential to bring you to this position?
Well, first of all, I'm going to be transparent and say that this is my first job as a CEO. But I was interested in the opportunity to lead an organization, and I hope that passion came forward with the board. My background in higher education did ground me in an appreciation for research, questioning the status quo, and looking outside one's own organization at best practices. And while I was an English major and my graduate degree is in public administration, I love numbers and the ability to quantitatively measure and report on outcomes, and then compare those outcomes to benchmarks to see how we really are doing. I also feel that it is important to have a deep understanding of those nonprofit financials, as I mentioned. And it takes time, but it's time that is well spent. And so I've done my own tutorials on accounting. I'm planning to start a certificate program in accounting because I feel like I need to deepen my knowledge. And I think that goes to just having an inquisitive mind and being someone who always wants to learn and improve, and who is also willing to be proactive when you see an issue or a challenge, and not wait for somebody else to start creating a solution.
So I saw this presentation about efficiency at the Colorado Nonprofit Convention, and I was impressed how important is this subject. That's why I invited you guys to the podcast. Can you guys tell me, why do you choose this and why do you believe efficiency and cost savings are essential for nonprofit leaders?
Well, first and foremost, because it's the right thing to do. As nonprofit leaders, we have a duty to use our resources, most often entrusted to us by individuals in our own communities, in the most efficient way, and to create the biggest impact in our communities. In addition, there is actually research that efficiency and quality most often go hand in hand. Too often, efficiency is thought of as a trade-off with accuracy, on the logic that doing something more quickly necessarily sacrifices quality. But in fact, gains in efficiency are most often driven by increases in specialization, standardization, and automation, and those are the very same things that are most often associated with an increase in quality. And finally, what I would say is that we know that organizations that are trusted are often the ones who are also the most financially successful. While a personal connection to the nonprofit is the number one factor that influences a donor's decision to give, not far behind that is trust. And according to the Nonprofit Association, they have a report that says that 76% of donors say that their perception of whether an organization is well managed and effective will impact their decision to give. So we kept doing a little bit more digging because we wanted to look and see, well, did that actually translate into dollars? And there is a very recent study in the Journal of Accounting, Auditing, and Finance that analyzed over 6,300 nonprofits in the GuideStar database and found that as a group, nonprofits that earned a seal of transparency, which is perceived effectiveness and efficiency, averaged 53% more in contributions the following year compared to organizations that didn't.
And can you tell us how United Way used this approach to do the turnaround in the organization? Because I think this was your role when you arrived here. Take a deep look into these subjects and work with them.
Yes, it was definitely my very clear mandate. I walked in to an organization that had a strong reputation in the community, and obviously United Ways are very well known, but the generosity of our board of directors in wanting to fund nonprofits at a very high level had us staring at a $400,000 deficit in our budget. And I just in good conscience cannot operate an organization with a budget that is almost 10% of our operations overall. And so I came in, and I think any leader who comes into a new organization, the very first thing that you need to do before you start changing anything is just observe and ask a lot of questions. But I was kind of under the gun, feeling like, gosh, I have one fiscal year to fix this, and our fiscal closes on June 30th, and I got hired on August 1st, and so the clock was ticking for those 10 months. So in retrospect, that's not an ideal situation for anyone to come in and feel like they had to start making changes that quickly, but sometimes you just have to go with the situation that you're in. So what we did is very early on, we very overtly said that our priority is to implement cost-saving measures and to look for efficiencies in the organization. We looked at our current organizational structure and started making changes by questioning the status quo. I'll say that I think why is one of the most helpful questions a CEO can ask. It helps clear up any assumptions that you might personally have about why something is working the way that it is. And it also exposes areas where efficiencies exist, because that's the way we've always done it, just like my worst thing. At United Way, staff knew that it was a priority to work together to come up with these efficiencies, and Sarah will talk about our cross-departmental teams in a minute. But that put people into an efficiency mindset that allowed us to decrease our biggest cost, which was personnel. And we did that just as we saw attrition, and we did that by implementing processes and technology changes that allowed us not to have to hire every time we lost a staff person.
Thank you. What level of professionals needs to be involved in building a culture of efficiency in a nonprofit?
I think everyone in the organization helps to create that efficiency, and they're all leaders in their own way. And I think everybody plays a key role in the organization to make it a well-running nonprofit. And one way, as Annie mentioned, is to have cross-departmental teams. We utilized our cross-departmental teams. We separated all of our staff members into several different teams. I think we had about 4 to 5 teams, and they were all tasked with finding cost savings in some capacity, whether that was resource development or marketing. An example project would be that we had a cross-departmental team finding cost savings with printing expenses. They saved about $5,000 by printing tax receipts in black and white. We also eliminated some mailings, and we also decreased our letterhead and envelope printing by ordering annually rather than quarterly. We also saw several other efficiencies in some of our policies and procedures for our second round of cross-departmental teams. We also found that these cross-departmental teams broke down some silos throughout the organization, which really helped to increase our staff morale and our buy-in from staff with our organization. We've also, on top of just our staff here, we've looked at other ways that we can expand, and we've started to work with CSU on looking at work study programs so we can have more support through interns, whether that's a freshman, sophomore, junior, or master's student, and we're looking at how we can collaborate with them and have them help support our staff. We're also looking at a VISTA program. VISTA is a form of AmeriCorps, and these members serve about a year, and they're capacity building, so they can help write grants, they can help with resource development and fundraising. So we're looking at that, and we also are hoping to expand that VISTA program to other nonprofits to help with their nonprofit excellence and capacity building in other organizations.
That's great. I'm putting myself in the spot of a small nonprofit, an executive director that wants to bring efficiency for this organization as well. Who should they bring to be involved in this project? The board members, maybe volunteers. In small organizations, I think volunteers play a very important role sometimes. What is your opinion about it?
They do, and we're not necessarily a small organization, but we rely on volunteers, and in fact, we redesigned the structure of our board to be more committee centric so that we could tap into not only the expertise of our board members, but also have our board members then bring other community members in with expertise. So examples that United Way here that we have our marketing committee, where we have retired marketing executives helping us to redefine our statements. We also have an operations committee with people in the development world and who also can provide us with technology expertise that we otherwise would be paying for through a consultant. And anytime that we can look to volunteers to provide expertise, it's a win-win for the organization because we increase the capacity of our own staff, and at the same time we're building bridges and being able to communicate the mission of United Way to new people who also may become donors.
We're talking here with very experienced executive directors and brand new executive directors of nonprofits. Where should they start? Taking a look on operations, on the financial area? How to begin?
I think some low-hanging fruit is just looking at your budget and even how you are doing your budgeting process. We found that in many of the organizations that we've worked with or that we personally have experience with, budgeting was based on making adjustments from a prior year budget rather than periodically taking a step back and doing more of a zero-based budgeting and having people go through the process of really having to explain why that expense is needed, not why a 3% or 5% increase on what they're already receiving was needed. And we found many areas where items in the budget had just been put in because they had always been there. And so we were able to trim our budget and at least ask some of those, again, why questions in terms of the spending and become more efficient that way. Related to the budget is the issue of investment income. And I feel like that's also low-hanging fruit because it often gets pushed to the back burner. But how are you using or not using the dollars that you don't need for day-to-day operations? Where are your reserves and how much money are they bringing in for you while they are sitting in some sort of a reserve account? We found that we were missing out on opportunities to gain interest by keeping a large amount in a checking account where we were getting nothing back. And so we did some transfers. We were able to increase the amount in a quasi-endowment that we can always access through our board's direction, but that is making between 6 and 8% a year versus 0. We also looked at all of the CDs where we had short-term investments and saw that because we were not being proactive in asking our partners at the different banks to do more for us, we were missing out on opportunities to get a higher interest rate. And so just taking the time to go through those shop rates and go back and ask our partners to do more really increased and sometimes double the interest rate that we were able to get on our short-term investments. Before turning over to Sarah, I'll say one more thing, which is about the idea of real estate. Facilities is also a large part of many nonprofits' budgets, and I think it's worth taking a step back from that and also considering what can you do to decrease overall facilities and for many of us rent costs. I'll give you the example of our building, which is not going to be applicable to everyone, but We are an organization in Colorado that is eligible to receive child care contribution tax credit funds, which is a 50% tax credit for those who give to organizations providing early care and education. And what we found is that there were many businesses in our community that didn't even know about this tax credit, but when they did, we had one that was a developer who owned a lot of real estate approach us and ask if he could write us a check that basically would cover all of our rent for the year and put that towards child care scholarships. So we were able to accept that and begin to think about actually increasing our investment in early child care for low-income families in our community, which we know is one of the greatest ways that United Way can impact the community long-term, and at the same time greatly reduce our facility costs through this donation. And we know that not everybody can do that, but everybody in every nonprofit can think about what are the tax credits that are available to me, who are the donors who are out there who might be interested in talking to us about space, and where are donors, what is their priority. So with this specific developer, we're in a community that has very mixed feelings about development, and so tapping into that, where this person gets to have their name and quite a bit of exposure on a community building that's in the center of town, also helps them. And we always want to look for those win-win situations. They also are a B Corp, so if any of you have B Corps in your community, it's a great way. Every year, those who are certified as a B Corp need to up the ante on their philanthropic give to the community, and this is one way that they could do it, so it could be part of your conversation. And again, this organization, this company was really not even involved with United Way before, and now we have this great opportunity to expand not only with them, but with all of the partners that a developer has, which are many.
In addition to what Annie was mentioning, is United Way of Larimer County used to have a 211 call center here several years ago, and we had decided to transition that program to Mile High United Way for cost-saving purposes. We were able to cut our costs by 1/3, and because we transitioned the program, we helped to streamline the call center system, and overall it helped to provide a better customer service for Larimer County.
I think also for the end user, the service is much better right now, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we are able to offer more by combining resources with other United Ways. And I think that shared service component is a big piece of how organizations can look for efficiency and effectiveness. We don't all have to be an expert in every area, and we all don't have to have every technology. And so by allowing United Way in Denver to really build up the infrastructure and technology used with 211, they've been able to expand their texting platform. They not only reply to people via the traditional phone calls, but to meet people really where they are today, which is on their phones, but not necessarily using them in the ways that we have in the past.
Perfect. Moving to another subject. I want to ask you guys, do you think that having transparency in the financial area and focusing on showing efficiency could bring more donors to your organization?
Yes, I think that our donor base here in Northern Colorado, as well as all over really the world, we have so much more information available to us that donors are becoming more savvy, and their expectations are growing in terms of what information they should be able to see. I think that nonprofits can do a better job of not relying on 60-page tax returns and 990s, but instead really distilling that information down. We've seen a big movement in dashboards, and that's a great way that nonprofits can take some of those efficiency measures and make them public in a way that's very easy to digest. And I would encourage nonprofits to really look at infographics and using some technology in terms and putting that out there on their website. And it's not always bad when the metrics aren't what you want them to be, because sometimes that shows where there's a community need. For our organizations here, because we fund many nonprofits in the community, we've really tried to instill and make sure that they are aware that we're not using these numbers against them, but we're using it to show both the community where there's need and also where United Way might need to be involved in helping to build capacity of organizations in the community.
Great. And how do you think accreditations like BBB help bring efficiency to the organization?
Well, I love Better Business Bureau. We have a great partnership with them in Northern Colorado. And I think they're one of the best accreditation platforms out there because they have over 20 different components of becoming a Better Business Bureau certified charity. And they really get to the heart of whether an organization has proper governance and financial measures in place that are going to both allow them to run efficiently and effectively and also provide that transparency to donors. We know that donors are going to be looking at those metrics, and so we also want to be a source of information about, the cost of doing fundraising or the cost of your general expenses. Is not the end all be all, but it really should be tied to your outcomes and the impact that you're having in the community. And I think those two conversations don't go hand in hand enough, but they do need to. And that just because you're spending less doesn't always mean that you're being most effective or most impactful, but it is when you can show that you are reaching those accreditation marks and that you are working on those benchmarks to be the 4-star on GuideStar, while also making sure that you truly are providing the biggest return on investment to your donors by making an impact in the community. That's when you're really successful.
And how can we bring efficiency to fundraising?
There are some caveats in fundraising that are old myths that are dying hard. One of them is that you get a very low return on investment for events, and while I believe that can be true, I think that you can also do events at a much lower cost ratio than the average, which is 50 cents on every dollar raised at an event actually just goes to pay for the event. At organizations that I've been with in the past, our standard has been under 30%, and we've been able to achieve that while still holding events at the Ritz-Carlton and other very nice places. And they can also really be a way that is probably better than just about any other way to attract new donors to your organization. So if you're a really well-established organization with a long track record, I would challenge you to put that 30% mantra into place for your event expenses. But if you're just baby nonprofit just getting started, go for that 50% mark and try to get as many people there as you possibly can, because that's your way. They're going to respond more at an event than they will from a direct mail piece from an organization that they don't know. And so I think beyond that, in terms of nonprofit efficiency in fundraising, again, think about who else is doing work that's very similar to yours in your space, and think about whether there could be collaboration. I was just in Estes Park last evening, and they have actually developed a collaborative planned giving group where a number of different nonprofits have come together to strategically make asks around planned giving in the community. And many of them were very hesitant to do that because they felt that they were potentially losing out on opportunities for themselves by having these collaborative conversations. But in the year that they've been doing this, they have seen gifts grow exponentially for all of the organizations in the community because they're working together, they're sharing best practices, and it's making the cost go down because they are not all having to do this in a silo.
Great. And how can we get the board members involved in bringing efficiency to the organization?
Sure. One thing that we've started doing with United Way of Larimer County, we have a board matrix, and in that matrix we track each individual's skills and expertise, and we're able to identify who might be able to help support United Way in a different sector. So we have people interested in marketing, and so they're on our marketing committee. We have people who are interested in public policy, and so they're in our public policy committee. And each of these individuals are able to support our organization, provide more capacity, and that alone has definitely helped with cost savings and efficiency in our organization.
I think in terms of that matrix as well, what's been really helpful is to really align any board vacancies that you have with the strategic goals of the organization and where you think you're going to have to put time, energy, and resources over the next few years. We didn't anticipate this, but we did a move for our building recently, and there were some legal components that needed to be handled as a part of that, and as both a fundraising organization and a funder, we have a lot of contracts, and so having a lawyer on our executive committee of our board has been not only invaluable in terms of giving us advice, it has also probably saved us literally tens of thousands of dollars. So if organizations can be thinking ahead a little bit, they can probably be making some smart decisions about who they get on their board that might be coming to the table with the resources that they would otherwise have to pay someone.
That's a great idea. Mm-hmm. Any ideas on how to reduce staff costs?
Yes, a few things that we've considered or started here at United Way was one, we've looked at our PTO. What we've done with our PTO is we have several different banks of time off, and a few of those would be our regular PTO, our wellness days, we have floating holidays, and we also have birthday day off. And with the floating holidays, the birthday, and the wellness, we're able to, if an employee leaves for any reason, we don't have to pay out that additional cost for when they leave. So that saves us some money financially if an employee does decide to leave our organization. We've also done, with our 403B retirement, we have a 3-year vesting period. After that, or during that time, we do a 5% match, and then if the employee decides to leave our organization, we end up using those contributions that the employee ended up using those individual contributions to reducing the employer cost. Also, we have looked at using a bonus structure instead of pay increases. With the bonus structure, it helps us with the long-term financial stability if for some reason our organization doesn't have continued revenue streams year after year, or if an organization is struggling with financial health, then they aren't setting themselves up to have each individual receive that additional dollars as take-home pay year after year. The bonus is just a one-time payment, and that's definitely benefited our organization not only financially, but also it's shown as a benefit to the employee as a compensation that's recognizing the good work that they've done, and for them to be able to achieve their goals.
Do you think that technology can bring efficiency to programs or only to administrative?
Well, I would say that technology, it's changing the whole world of nonprofits just like it is in every other sector. And so we are also looking at how we can actually better serve those who we consider our clients or our constituents through technology. One of our constituent groups is the nonprofits that we work with in the community, and we were able to debut a new online system for their grant applications this year that is helping us to be able to provide a better and higher level of customer service to them. They're able to see information in real time, and it's also helping to streamline things for our staff, who are able to much more quickly generate reports and provide feedback through automated messages. So we've loved that. We've looked at that on a number of different functions in terms of our different constituents. Our nonprofits are also all being now paid electronically, and that has been a huge savings for both our staff, who were printing the checks and mailing the checks and getting the checks returned in the mail, and so that has really helped with that process. And we've also seen in this really have an effect on the morale of our staff. They are so proud when they come up with something that improves efficiency, partly because they know that it's a priority for the organization, but I think also in part because doing those mundane rote tasks is not fun for anybody. And if you can be part of creating a better system and rolling that out and then seeing the benefits in terms of what your actual day-to-day responsibilities looks like, it truly is a win-win across the...
I like your idea of bringing in efficiency by not making so many external meetings. Can you tell us about your idea of using Skype for that? I love that. You have numbers to justify that.
An example of using Skype as a conference call option instead of driving to external meetings. If you take an example of somebody who has an external meeting that's about an hour away, that individual would be spending an hour driving there, an hour at a meeting, and an hour back. Now, if you consider what that staff time looks like, if they're getting paid $25 an hour, that's 2 additional hours of staff time just for drive, and that would be about $50. Let's say that the drive is about 120 miles combined. That's about 50 cents on the mile. So that's about $60 of additional cost. So combined, that's $110. Now, if you're meeting with that client on a regular basis, you may want to consider a Skype meeting on occasion just to save that $110. Also, if you are looking to have that one-on-one interaction, that's definitely important to do to get that face time. But if it is a cost savings to your organization, that might be something you'd want to consider.
That was a great idea. I love it. Can you refer to more additional resources for further investigation?
One thing that we use is TechSoup, which is a great opportunity to save costs with the organization. They have a lot of different services that are discounted for nonprofit organizations. Also, always ask new vendors if they have nonprofit discounts. And also check in with your local libraries. Sometimes they have free or reduced cost trainings for your staff to also help your capacity in your organization. Anytime you are looking into a new technology, you're going to definitely want to look at the ROI, whether it's saving staff time or cost savings, and then you also want to do a pilot program if possible.
And I would just echo and also go back to some of those charitable evaluators out there and the breadth of information that they're providing on what they feel is important for nonprofits to think about in terms of efficiency. Again, Better Business Bureau and that national or local charity accreditation is a great resource. It goes into quite a bit of deep detail on how nonprofits will be evaluated, and it's a great checklist. Even if you don't want to specifically go through the process at this time, you can be using that internally as just a checkup and maybe work on 1 to 2 things a quarter or a fiscal year and build up to the place where you would be certified as a charitable or as an accredited charity. I think, again, one of the best sources of information that we use when we were thinking about doing this podcast is there is a website out there called nonprofitsource.com, and they have a wealth of information on corporate social responsibility, which we didn't really get to touch on today, but its importance and how nonprofits who are seen as efficient and effective are really getting the dollars from our corporate partners. And we also see that happening a lot in the foundation sector. Foundations want to see nonprofits being efficient and effective. They want to see them working together. Collaboration is still a big buzzword in that regard. And so the Council on Foundations is another great resource just to check out if you're looking for new funding sources and looking to see what foundations are requiring of nonprofits these days. That's a great resource as well.
Thank you. And I think this conversation doesn't finish here. Sarah and Annie are very open to answer questions. If you want to bring anything related to the subject, I think you can get in touch with them. Sarah, can you give any contact information?
Of course. If you'd like to contact Annie or myself, definitely email me. My name is Sarah Bromley, and my email is sbromley, that's BROMLEY, at uwaylc.org. Feel free to message us at any time. We're happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time, Annie. I think it's always good to have a CEO in our room giving us advices. I love the subject that you picked, Sarah. You were amazing. Thank you guys for everything.
Thanks
Thank
so much.
you.
Thank you for listening to Wisdom for Nonprofits. To hear past and future episodes, please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast channel. We appreciate your reviews and suggestions for future show topics. If you have a question or a suggestion, please write to us at podcast@wity.tech. More resources are available for you at our website, wity.tech. And please join us in the Wisdom for Nonprofits group on LinkedIn. Wisdom for Nonprofits is copyright 2019 by Bettina Meyer-Flug and wity.tech. All rights reserved.